Okay, I studied psychology of religion at university, which is pretty mental, and I got really, really interested in the sort of relationship between the brain and the mind and some of the slightly weirder stuff that goes on in human experience. So what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about two things. The mind thing I'm going to talk about is scientists have got really bad haircuts, which you will see. I'm not going to comment on that, but you'll see. The main thing I want to talk about is there any evidence for another dimension to life? This is Stephen Hawking. I don't really know a lot about physics. I did physics A-level, but not very well. But he suggested that there are 11 dimensions to the universe, which is slightly weird because that means there are lots of dimensions that we can't actually sense. So science is beginning to have to break down the idea that there's the only stuff that we can talk about is stuff that we can actually observe, that we can see and feel and taste and touch. We've got 5 senses that enable us to sense 4 dimensions, including time. But what if there's more? I want to just give you a very simple example. What if, for example, some of us kind of lived in 2 dimensions, and others of us lived in 3 dimensions, like a piece of paper, 2 dimensions, a pencil. If they met, stick the pencil through the paper, what would the paper sense? It would only sense a 2-dimensional shape. It wouldn't know this is a pencil. It would go, oh, that's a lovely hexagon. It wouldn't know that there was another dimension to the pencil. Maybe life is a bit like that. Maybe in this space right now there are other dimensions to life. Here's an example. I'm sorry, I'm a man, I apologise. If I stare at a beautiful lady from behind, sometimes she will turn around and look at me for no apparent reason. Sometimes she will adjust her clothing. Please tell me I'm not the only one. Okay, I am. Here's a man with bad hair. He's called Rupert Sheldrake. He's a scientist at Cambridge, and he's been trying to devise experiments that show that we can actually sense some of these other dimensions. What people used to call extrasensory perception. Here's his best experiment. You can do it when you go home. Stare at the back of someone's head, right? If you decide randomly whether or not to stare at the back of someone's head, what's the chance that they would get it right? It should be 50-50, like the toss of a coin. If someone's behind me staring at me or not staring at me, I can guess. He's done this online with people from all around the world 2 million times. You can go to his site, sheldrake.org, and do it yourself. This is how it comes out. When people stare at the back of your head, you've got a 60-40 chance of getting it right. Now, maybe only people that believe in this stuff go to the website, but that's the result. Here's another example. That's my dog, Ellie. When I'm coming home, she comes to the window and waits for me. Not when my wife comes home but upsets her. But here's the thing. She comes to the window when I leave the office, not when I turn into the street. Sheldrake's theory, he calls it morphic resonance, something fancy like that. And it's become the plot of a very famous comic book series. So this idea is starting to take on. Read that, Why, The Last Man, fantastic. Here's another man with a bad haircut, Michael Persinger. Now he's tried to find out, well, what part of the brain is it that's doing this weird stuff? And he created something that looks like he made it in his shed on a Saturday afternoon. And he called it the God helmet. Essentially, yes, that is a motorbike helmet with a bunch of electromagnets stuck in the side. It's slightly frightening, and his lamp only looks slightly better. It stimulates the right temporal lobe, the green bit there on that diagram, and it induces religious experiences, sensations of things going on. It's the same part of the brain that goes mad when people have epilepsy, and are crazy in other ways. I'm sorry to use that denigrative word. So it raises the question of whether or not we can have this extrasensory perception, maybe in the same way that we're musical. Some of us are brilliant, some of us are completely rubbish. Like this man, he tried the God helmet, Richard Dawkins, and he didn't feel anything. So what if he's an atheist not just because of his rationality, but because he hasn't felt something that, according to the God helmet man, 80% of us can feel. So this is just a plea to say, if there's a little chink of light, go and open the door and see what you might find out there in terms of whether there is another dimension to life. Thank you.